Well, the White House is scrambling to walk back Joe Biden's comment that Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power, insisting he was not calling for regime change. The American leader made the gaffe yesterday during a speech in Poland.
Dismissing the comment, the Kremlin spokesman said the president of Russia is a choice for the Russian people. Biden says the war has been a strategic failure for Moscow.
Where the appetites and ambitions of a few forever seek to dominate the lives and liberty of many. My message to the people of Ukraine is a message I delivered today to Ukraine's foreign minister and defense minister, who I believe are here tonight. We stand with you, period.
Well, Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams is a NATO historian, journalist and former reserve officer and joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Peter. Look, Joe Biden made these comments off the cuff. They weren't scripted. He's not wrong, is he?
No, and I don't think it's a gaffe. You've got to have a look at this in context. And the context is that he was speaking in Poland, which shares a border with Ukraine, and the Russians have shelled to within 10 or 15 miles of that border. And there are 2 million Ukrainians currently in Poland. And Biden was speaking to them and all the other neighbouring nations who are extremely worried about Russian aggression. So his remark of, this man cannot remain in power wasn't a statement of, we're going to remove him. It was empathising with those who are next to Ukraine and therefore, in their minds, next in the line for Vladimir Putin's attention.
Good morning to you, Peter. I mean, as Stephen's just saying, I think Biden was voicing a lot of how many of us do feel. But the White House are still trying to play down these comments. I suppose they don't want Putin to feel backed into a corner, do they?
Well, I mean, there's a bit of that, but I think Putin is in a corner anyway, and I'm not sure that anything that President Biden is going to say is going to make it worse. But I got goosebumps listening to the speech because this is history being made. This is one of those turning points in the 21st century where all of a sudden Europe has come together. And this is the leader of the free world, the president of the United States, who is still regarded as playing that role, coming over to Europe. And it's very rare that a president will spend 4 or 5 days out of his own country, and that underlines just how urgent this is. And what's happened is, of course, Europe is in two tracks. NATO is an organisation that is behind the scenes quite split on how to deal with this. And some nations would really rather not poke the bear and would hope this whole problem would go away. And on the other, the closer you are to Russia, the more hawkish you're going to be in terms of reaction. And what Biden has got to do is gather these very diverse elements and come up with a consensus. And he's stepped into that role of being a collaborative leader, of uniting 30 nations and really aiming them all towards a common point. And so his comments yesterday, they can be taken out of context by Russia, and they were always going to be, was aimed really at reassuring those nations who feel most nervous about Russia. And I think that's what he achieved.
What do you think NATO is going to be like moving forward? Because, I mean, clearly a key objective from Vladimir Putin, whether with this particular incursion or more in his sort of general attitude to NATO, is that he wants NATO to become more divided. I mean, that's an established point with him. This does, on the surface at least, seem to have done the opposite.
Exactly. I mean, in so many different ways, what Putin has achieved is the opposite of the division that he sought. And, even if we were to look back 2 months, I don't think anyone would have predicted that we are where we are internationally in terms of geopolitics, a united Europe. We know that behind the scenes, Finland and Sweden, who've never expressed a desire to go any closer to NATO. They work very closely with NATO, but they're not members of it. Both, I think, in popular opinion in both countries, has swung round way beyond 50% into the 60s, into the high 60s. of joining, and if one does, then the other will do. So not only has Putin managed to unite Europe, he's making the NATO alliance much stronger, and it may indeed grow in size. So he's achieved the opposite of what he wanted. But I think also Biden is growing into the role of president, and the idea of sort of Sleepy Joe and the insults that are inherited from his former presidential rival are sloping off his shoulders now, because he's seen to be the man that he was elected to be. And of course, he's been around for so long as a vice president and working on Capitol Hill and internationally. He knows a lot of these other countries that he's visited, and he knows the way the world works in terms of geopolitics. So he's in his comfort zone. And I think Vladimir Putin is certainly not.
Peter, Russia says that phase one is complete. They're going to be focusing their efforts to the east of the country, but we are seeing shelling in Lviv and smoke overnight as well. That's obviously to the west of the country. What are we seeing there?
OK, so we had a couple of rocket strikes on Lviv last week. And of course, the thing that is really hurting Russia is the flow of these Western arms, anti-tank missiles and air defense missiles coming into the country, being used by Ukrainian forces, but who have been earlier trained by the Western powers, particularly Canada, the United Kingdom and the United States. And all of those weapons are coming in over the Polish border into Western Ukraine. And Russia had tried to interrupt that flow a couple of times last week. And that's what they're doing. They're searching for the likely places where these weapons are coming in and being stored, and the troops are being trained on them. So they don't know, but they're guessing. And we'll have a lot more strikes like that, cruise missile strikes with missiles launched from maybe 500 miles away. But that's what's going on there. But I mean, phase one is now complete, so the Russians say. I'm not quite sure what that means. We were never told what the operation really was all about. And we've been told that phase one of this operation, which doesn't even have a name, whose objective we never knew, is now complete. So that's telling us nothing. They're now going back to the Donbass, which was always their main aim, which is very curious because so many of their troops, obviously, if they were there to liberate the Donbass, have got lost and have ended up near Kharkiv and Kiev and other places. So there's a lot of, the usual misinformation going on there. And I'm not really crediting the comments that came out after 1 month of, phase one is complete. It doesn't really mean anything at all. I think more of the same.
OK, Dr. Peter Caddick-Adams, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you. At